One of the most urgent tasks for our country is to decisively defeat the climate hysteria hoax.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
The ability of CO2 to do the heavy work of creating a climate catastrophe is almost nil at this point.
The price of oil has been artificially elevated to the point of insanity.
That's not how you power a modern industrial system.
The ultimate goal of this renewable energy, plan is to reach the exact same point that we're at now.
You know who's tried that? Germany. 7 straight days of no wind for Germany. Their factories are shutting down.
They really do act like weather didn't happen prior to 1910.
Today is Friday.
That's right, Greta. It is Friday, and this is the best day of the week. Not just because the weekend is almost here, because this is the day the Heartland Institute casts the Climate Realism Show. My name is Jim Lakely. I'm your host and executive vice president of the Heartland Institute. We are an organization that has been around for 42 years, and we are known as the leading global think tank pushing back on climate alarmism. Heartland and this show bring you the data, the science, the truth, and some fun that helps counter the climate alarmist narrative you've been fed every single day of your life. There is nothing else quite like the Climate Realism Show streaming anywhere, so I hope you will help us out and bring friends to view this live stream every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and also like, share, and subscribe, and be sure to leave comments underneath this video. All of these things help convince YouTube's very mysterious algorithm to smile upon this program, and that gets the show in front of even more people. And as a reminder, because big tech and the legacy media are not big fans of the way we cover climate and energy on this program, Heartland's YouTube channel has been demonetized. So if you want to help the show, and I really hope you do, please visit heartland.org/TCRS. That's heartland.org/TCRS. And you can join other friends of the program from all around the world, literally, who help bring the show to the world every single week. And we also want to thank our streaming partners, junkscience.com, CFACT, What's Up With That, the CO2 Coalition, and our friends at Heartland UK Europe. We have a big show today, so let's get started. As usual, we have with us Anthony Watts, Senior Fellow at the Heartland Institute and publisher of the world's most viewed website on climate change. What's Up With That? We have Sterling Burnett, who for about 90 minutes every Friday is known as the Archbishop of Ranterbury, but all the other times he's the director of the Arthur B. Robinson Center for Climate and Environmental Policy at the Heartland Institute. Linnea Lueken, Senior Fellow for Energy and Environment Policy at Heartland. Of course, Andy Singer, producer extraordinaire behind the scenes, making sure everything runs and flows smoothly. And hanging out with all of us again is Anika Sweetland of the CO2 Coalition. Anika has a degree in climate studies from the University of Western Australia and is a former energy advisor to the Australian government. She gave a fantastic presentation at Heartland's World Prosperity Forum back in January in Switzerland, which you can watch on this very channel that you're watching this stream. And she also presented at our climate conference in April in Washington, D.C. She is a superstar in the climate realism communications world. Welcome back, Anika. It's so good to see you.
Oh, thank you. It's such a pleasure to be back. I'm excited.
Good. Now, we chatted a little bit through messaging, and you said that you have a couple, maybe at least one climate joke to tell us today to get us started. Go ahead.
Oh, right. Well, why was the climate scientist bad at relationships? He kept saying, it's not you. It's the unprecedented rate of change we're experiencing. What's a climate scientist's favorite pickup line? Hey girl, are you CO2? Because you're making everything warmer, and my models say we only have 12 years left.
I think that's the only time there's ever been a double drum for
All right.
jokes.
We're going to go for a triple drum. Last one, I promise.
Oh,
A
my.
climate scientist, an economist, and a weatherman walk into a bar. The weatherman says, I'm pretty sure we'll have rain next week. The economist says, depends on your model. And the climate scientist says, shut up and pour me a pint, or I'll revise the historical data.
How dare you?
I'm sorry. When are you going to tell the jokes?
Oh, Sterling.
Oh no!
Oh no,
It went right over your pointy hat.
it did. The Archbishop's back in the house, but has a minimal sense of humor, I guess.
Yeah. So, hey, Sterling, you have to be nice to our guests. I do control the mute button and the kick you out of the studio button, so you got to better be on better behavior here. All right.
Look, they
Can
weren't
our
the
audience
best.
really go
Weren't the
4
best.
weeks without me?
Yeah.
I guess we can find out.
All right. Well, we do have, like I said, we have a big show today. We got a lot of topics to get to, and we will start out, as we always do, with the crazy climate news of the week. Hit it, Andy. Thank you very much, Bill Nye, unpaid assistant on this show. Our first item today I have titled "We Are Winning," and this is from Climate Change Weekly number 582, written by one Sterling Burnett at the Heartland Institute from back on June 18th. Let me read from it for you and we can discuss. The signs all over are indicating the media's focus on climate change is dramatically and rapidly waning. Rather than reflecting an acknowledgement that a realistic assessment of climate facts show no climate crisis is in the offing, the media's declining climate coverage seems to be a bow to an economic reality. Climate change just doesn't sell. An initial indicator of the media's climb down from the alarming 24 hours a day, 7 days a week pronouncements of the so-called climate crisis came in early February. The Washington Post fired 13 of its climate desk reporters, about 2/3 of its staff dedicated to writing about climate change. The Washington Post had long been leading the charge, pushing climate scare stories and detrimental energy policies that were supposedly necessary to prevent a climate catastrophe. Then, in late May, National Public Radio announced it was disbanding its 10-person climate desk, the department dedicated solely to reporting stories of climate doom. As part of a larger restructuring, NPR fired its chief climate editor, Neela Banerjee, and folded some of its remaining staff into other departments on its national desk. Politico then followed in early June, announcing it was shutting down its flagship climate and environmental publications, E&E News Daily, Greenwire, Climate Wire, Energy Wire, and E&E News PM. These publications were leading independent outlets of climate, energy, and environment news for nearly 3 decades, writes Sterling Burnett. I will, before throwing this to Sterling to start, I'm going to add a little bit to his analysis here in Climate Change Weekly, which, by the way, you can subscribe to by going to heartland.org and hitting the subscribe button at the top. The United Nations, they had their latest meeting for climate negotiations in Germany this month, and it saw the fewest journalists in attendance in more than a decade. And I also saw a story on Inside Climate News this week lamenting again that elected Democrats have embraced what they call climate hushing, which means they aren't talking about stopping climate change on the stump, let alone bleating about climate justice, whatever that is. So Sterling, like I said, we will start with you since you wrote this. I assume that this is good news, but are we all going to have to find another line of work?
No.
Okay.
Look, I won't say I have job security because you never know. But as far as will there still be bad environmental policy issues for Heartland and others to take up, even if climate change goes away, even if that becomes a non-issue, and it hasn't yet. But even if it does, we've got plenty of job security because politicians always have bad ideas about the environment, even in climate change. Look, the reporting's down. It's a lagging, the press is a lagging indicator. They're following the politics. They're following the economics. They're following finally sort of what public opinion has told them for 3 decades. They've come to find that after 3 decades or more of propaganda, they haven't moved the needle of how many people care about climate change or where they rank it in relation to other issues. It was at about 47% when they started, and it's about 47% that are worried today. And they've seen there in the meantime, as they've lied about, the climate catastrophe, the pending climate catastrophe, they've seen their reputations fall. Look, Donald Trump is upside down in his popularity, right? His opinion polls, he's not rated very high. You know who's rated below him? Congress. You know who's rated even below Congress? Journalists. So, they're finally getting the message. They're firing their climate reporters. The climate reporting is down. It's down by about, I think, 42% since 2001, the number of stories. And, anecdotally, I find that when I go out searching for good stories to respond to climate realism, it's not that I can't find those stories, but, it used to be almost daily you'd find a New York Times story if you wanted to cover the New York Times, or a Washington Post story if you want to cover the Washington Post. Pretty much the only outlet that regularly, almost daily or every other day covers climate change is The Guardian. And The Guardian, is The Guardian. So it's a trend, but does it mean it's all over? No. Look, whatever you think of Donald Trump as president, he won't be around forever. And if we get the wrong person back in the White House, climate change could come roaring back as an issue. Right now, the Democrats are running from it. They ran from it during the election. They're running on affordability. Honestly, I think that fig leaf is going to fall pretty soon because they keep imposing the same policies that caused that caused energy to be unaffordable. You keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That's the definition of madness. And I think the public will see through it. That they elected Spanberger and they elected others who did bad energy policy. But as they keep doing it and prices don't come down, I think they might finally get the blame.
Yep.
Sterling's been saving up all that rant energy while he's been gone. So I don't really have anything to add now.
I thought that was less ranty than usual, to be fair.
I would say
it was a thorough point by point rant.
For our situation here with, are we winning or not? We've had a couple of major, climate skeptic bloggers, or at least, climate realists and stuff, who have retired from covering it just because they say, look, we beat it, so we're just gonna throw in the towel. And that's, not everyone is going to be doing this forever. It's appropriate. You don't have to stay in this into eternity. It does get kind of tiring to cover the same thing over and over again. But here's my point, is that it might be crushed here in the States for now. But Europe is obviously still in the grip of this thing, right? Of the climate alarmist machine. All you see right now is them, banning further use of air conditioning in the middle of a major heat wave because they're worried about electricity generation, because they refuse to improve their grid and they just want to, decarbonize still over there. It's crazy. And I was thinking about this last night after I saw some news from the Telegram, one of those, talking about how they're trying to encourage farmers in the UK to stop raising beef cattle and to start growing lentils on that land instead in order to, stop climate change. And I'm thinking, man, they just will not let up on any of this. They are still at it with stuff that is not only unpopular, but worthless. What does the UK cattle population contribute to carbon dioxide emissions overall? Nothing. Just like probably less than 0.1%. And they want them to shut their operations down for climate, as if it's going to stop the kind of heat wave that they're having right now. Like, even if you granted them that the current heat wave is caused by, anthropogenic climate change or whatever, which I don't agree with, but if we granted them that, banning air conditioning was never going to stop it from happening. Or banning cattle, or trying to convert all your cattle land to lentils or whatever, or peas, is not going to stop it. What's the point? Why are people are dying. People are dying without access to air conditioning.
If you shift from gassy cows to gassy humans, does that make it any better?
Yeah.
I mean, lentils, I don't know, man.
But yeah, it's but my point is, you're actually causing people to suffer and die over something that isn't going to help them in the long term even anyway. So what are we doing? Obviously,
when
to
you
change the weather or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. When you have socialists at the helm, this is the dystopian future that awaits. It is totalitarian control. It's no logic. It's just complete control. They want to control the food supply. And, they just, it's terrible.
Well,
And
Anika,
as bad as our media is, I think there's, yours over there is a lot worse. Like the blackout on, good information is so much worse over there. And in Australia too. I mean, it's like a completely different universe. Thank goodness for the internet, right?
Yeah, and ours is highly censored over here. They came up, we've been going through a heat wave here, and the Met Office came up with just a random number, 2052. Apparently, that's when summers here are going to hit 45 degrees or more. And I mean, they just pulled a number out of a hat. Oh, 2052. What should we say? What will scare people? 45 degrees. I mean, that's not founded on any sort of study or science. They've just pulled it out of their hat. And people believe it, and it's just a disgrace. And you're right on the air conditioning thing. It's frowned upon in regulatory terms to have air conditionings in buildings.
Well, Anika, I have a question for you. I have a question for you, Anika, regarding air conditioning in the UK. Is this something that you can go out and anyone can buy one? Or is there some kind of a stupid rule that says you shall be denied being shipped an air conditioner from Amazon?
Thou shalt be denied air conditioning. So basically, you can have your air conditioning installed. But for example, if you purchase a new home, it's very unlikely that it's going to have air conditioning. And the official line over here is that we have to prioritize passive cooling, which is clever design, shading, ventilation, because air conditioning is energy hungry and therefore bad for the climate. So most developers simply don't bother because it's a whole lot of extra regulatory processes, thermal modeling, and huge amounts of justification documents. So the political class has constructed a regulatory system that actively discourages the single most effective technology for keeping people alive when these heat waves occur.
Well, and hypocritically, if you look in Europe, and I would wager, I haven't been to England in a long time, but I would wager where you find air conditioning in England is in the homes of the wealthy. Right? The elites. We have our air. You can't have yours because we're saving the planet on your behalf.
Yes.
I'll wager, I hear that the king and queen are no longer going to reside at Buckingham Palace, but they're going to stay at other places instead. I'll wager all those places have central air.
Oh, of course they do. And the, Ed Miliband, Mad Miliband, he's banned underfloor heating, outlawed it.
Why?
Thou shalt not have warm feet in winter.
What's the justification for that?
Because it's energy intensive, and fair enough, charge us an arm and a leg for our energy, but why don't we get to decide how we use it? I mean, we're paying top dollar for the stuff and we still don't get to decide how to use it. Once again, it's just totalitarian control.
Well, you can't decide how to use it because regardless of what you're paying, there's just not enough of it out there if you all adopted air conditioning and underfloor heating, because they won't expand, modern, largely fossil fuel based electric power generating sources. But
that's a very good point.
They're going to hell in a handbasket there, saying, "Oh my God, we have no power," and they refuse to explore any more in the North Sea. I mean, even Norway is saying, "No, we're going back into the North Sea. We need oil and gas." Not England.
No, it's economic self-sabotage, to put it lightly.
But I pity the fool.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess I mislabeled this segment. Maybe we're winning here in the United States, and surely it's only temporary. But as you guys were talking, I actually looked up GB News, which I know you respect and like there because it's real news, not like the BBC. They have a story that says Britons have been ordered to remove air conditioning from their homes despite the country baking in up to 40 Celsius heat this week. They've told them to take it down over concerns about carbon dioxide emissions. I mean, is that really happening? They're telling people at the time they need it, you need to turn this stuff off. Extreme heat kills people.
Yes.
People die because of this.
Yes. If the goal was genuinely to reduce deaths linked to climate change, then the current approach is not merely suboptimal, it's actively counterproductive. It is true and it is an outrage. And, we're in a natural period of warming. It's only going to get warmer. People need to invest in air conditioning. I think I should buy shares in air conditioning over here because surely people won't be able to resist it.
Look, Jim, unfortunately, for self-defense, for all sorts of things, the time in England where an Englishman's home is his castle is long past.
That is a shame. Yep.
We have a comment here from someone, Fairgreen, who says it's hardly hot enough for long enough to justify AC anyway in the UK, I'd say. And I think that's probably generally true, but you can have a mini split. You can have a little window unit or something that you can just like unplug and put away when you're not using it. You don't have to have it all the time.
My response to that,
reverse cycle. It's called reverse cycle air conditioning. It does heating and air conditioning. I mean, imagine the possibilities.
My response to him is, who is he or anybody else to say what's justified in your own home?
Right.
If I want air, if I want to run it at 60 degrees all the time and I'm willing to pay the power bill, it's none of his business. And it should be none of the government's business.
Yeah, this is what people say a lot in the UK. Oh, it's only for a few weeks of the year, but soon it'll only be for a couple of months of the year, right? So what's the point? It's shrugged off. The creature comforts are shrugged off.
Yeah, and the answer to that is, okay, then maybe you're not going to buy an air conditioning unit. That's your business. I'm going to have one anyway for the 5 days a year that I feel like putting it on. And that's my business. That's not your business. And you certainly should not be banning me from buying it to reduce Britain's carbon footprint as if CO2 emissions were an actual thermostat like I have in my home when I turn on my AC. It's insane. So we are winning here a little bit, but there's still a long way to go.
Thank you.
I cede my bishopric of Rantaberry to Jim there.
Thank you for your sympathies. It means a lot. It's a very frustrating situation over here. And I'm banging my head after growing up in Australia where we live in the air conditioning and we also have heating because it gets cold as well, like the normal winter summer thing that happens in every country. So yeah, I don't understand it.
Well, that's the first time I've gone on a rant and someone said, thank you for your sympathies. So history is made. All right, let's move on to another item here. This comes from the Telegraph in the UK. Global climate tax coming? Uh-oh. Now, warning, this is an opinion piece that's against this idea, so the tone is a little strident. But let me read it from it for us today. 2 UN agencies, the International Maritime Organization, IMO, and the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, plan to tax global shipping and aviation for their greenhouse gas emissions. This would mark the first time an unelected institution has levied taxes on major sectors of global economic activity. The planned levies would expand the power and budgets of these agencies with no democratic accountability. Shipping produces just around 2% of global greenhouse gas emissions, yet a UN tax on it would add cost to virtually every traded good. Shipping carries more than 80% of global trade, a share expected to grow. Civil aviation accounts for approximately 2.5% of global emissions, allegedly. The planned carbon offset requirement would add further costs to international flights. In October 2026, the IMO will take a final vote on launching its carbon tax. The ICAO's requirement that airlines purchase carbon offsets for international flights comes into force in January 2027. Now, Anika, I want to start with you. The current government in the UK probably supports this. America does not. And it would even have a hard time supporting it, I think, even if Kamala Harris was president. But is the UN's plan for a global climate tax real, and can it actually really happen in this case?
Not only is it real, Jim, but it's worse than we think. The only real way of cutting emissions in a fuel-intensive industry like aviation, for example, is to offset them. And the approved offsetting project for flight emissions is the installation of electric cooking stoves into villages around Africa. Stay with me here. The VC fund, Delta 40, who produces these electric cookers, are funded by the Soros Economic Development Fund and the Rockefeller Foundation. And if that doesn't ring alarm bells, it should. And the irony here, Jim, is that, of course, the Rockefellers' wealth comes from oil. And in regards to the UK, obviously we're run by socialists over here. So the UK donates to this company every year under the umbrella of climate aid. Can you believe it? Just as I thought the climate scam couldn't get any worse.
Well put. Yeah, I can believe it. I 100% can believe it. One of my thoughts, though, is like, okay, they say they're going to impose this new tax. As we like to say here in the United States, come and take it. I wonder if they're going to be able to actually tax American ships with American flags on them. We'll have to see about that.
Well, I have a feeling that the Trump administration might have something to say about that. They stopped it last year. I think they'll stop it this year. I think they'll say, look, you guys seem to like our money at these organizations. Maybe you should just put the brakes on here, or all that largesse can dry up real quick, as we've already shown with the food, with the international aid and other departments. In the end, if there has to be a vote held, and if the Security Council has any say, we can just veto it.
America has a very good habit of putting their foot down when it comes to things like this, which is why your economy is so strong, and it's why it's going in such a fantastic direction.
Yeah, appreciate.
I don't have too much.
Go America!
So I have the same feeling as Sterling on this one. It's okay, United Nations. I guess probably Europe will pay if you ask them to. We're not going to, so good luck, I guess. What's your enforcement arm? Oh, right, the United States. We're not going to do that. So, all right, try.
I think maybe we need a new rendition of the Gadsden flag, where basically we have the "Don't Tread on Me" on top of the UN logo or something like that,
Or you just fly that on the back of your ship instead of your country's flag or whatever. And Ed Reed, one of our longtime viewers here, said that there are not a lot of U.S. flag ships, and he is correct. I kind of forgot that as I was making that point. But there's really not much more to say about this. I think Anika really summed up a good analysis of this, but I thought it was important to alert our audience and keep our eye out for this thing, because
you could change the flag to "Don't Tax on Me" and have it a broken up airplane or ship in parts.
I just love your guys' attitude towards this. God bless America. You're like, no, we're not paying. And, over here we'd be like, oh no, we're going to get poorer. I mean, it's just fantastic.
This just occurred to me too. If they tried something like this, the Trump administration certainly would have something to do with it. And I think, it takes money to put together like accounting departments to levy a global tax like that. And if Trump just withdraws from more UN programs and just refuses to pay any money to the United Nations, then, I mean, they're just totally sunk on anything they try to do. And I think they probably know that.
Yeah, I don't know what they have to go through to get this enacted, whether it has if they have their own authority to do that, or whether it has to go through a vote of the General Assembly or the Security Council. It'd win in the General Assembly, right? It wouldn't win in the Security Council. But in the end, the UN does not have an enforcement arm. Literally, it would be come and take it, because I'm sorry, you can't take money, UN, from our corporations, from American Airlines, or whatever airlines you want to talk about in America. The Europeans can impose taxes on all airlines flying into their country, but it's not a carbon tax. That's it's not some international carbon tax. China will not be levying this tax on their airlines. Dubai will not be levying this tax on their airlines. They have no enforcement mechanism. It goes back to Thomas Hobbes in the Leviathan. He said, "Covenant without the sword is but words," and that's what this is, folks. You can vote all day. If you don't have an army to come in and seize the money, you can't impose it.
Look, the Heartland Stew is founded by libertarians. One of our favorite slogans around here is "Taxation is theft." What taxation really is, literally, when it comes down to it, is at the point of a gun, taking money out of your pocket that you agree to pay so that you don't get smashed, let's just say it that way, by the government. What organization is going to blockade a harbor and say that those shipping containers, those ships with containers are not allowed to leave, I don't know, Hong Kong until they pay the global climate tax? Who is going to blockade that bay? Not the United Nations. They don't have a navy. It would be the United States. And there's no way the United States is going to be, the tax collector for the globe and for the globe, the new world order. The United States is, I don't even think under a Democrat this would happen in this country. So take heart, everyone. All right. That's 2 rants in just 2 things. I need to slow down. All right. Our next item here, this came to us. Anthony noticed this story this week. And I swear this is not just because Anika's on today, but this comes from the BBC. So it's yet another UK outlet. Is climate change ruining our sleep? And this is a description of a BBC radio piece that I will read for us here. Parts of India have been facing extreme heat with temperatures soaring past 46 degrees Celsius. But a less familiar story unfolds after dark. When temperatures stay high after sunset, an essential human need is threatened: sleep. Scientific research suggests that hot nights are leading many of us around the world to lose shut-eye already. Our bodies need to cool down to fall asleep, but hotter nights make that much harder. And the impacts go way beyond just feeling tired. Disrupted sleep has links to poor cardiovascular health and depression. Women, children, the elderly, and those living in hot countries with less income are most affected, naturally. As global temperatures rise due to climate change, experts warn that the impact on our sleep and our health will only worsen. Presenter Graham Jackson, I think, speaks to sleep expert Dr. Sophie Bostock and BBC Marathi reporter Janhavi Mool. They explore how rising temperatures are disrupting sleep in India and beyond and share practical tips on how to stay cool in a warming world. Anthony, there is nothing that climate change can't do, including threatening your health because you can't get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, there's all kinds of other things out there that disrupt sleep. There's too much light, there's eating different kinds of foods, there's stress, there's not getting enough vitamins, whatever it might be. I mean, there's literally hundreds of other things that will affect your sleep. And so climate change is isn't even a blip on the radar. Yes, it's harder to sleep when it's hotter. No 2 ways about it. However, I will point out that in America, we've solved that problem with air conditioning. That's exactly right. So, if sleep is becoming a worldwide problem due to hotter temperatures, get an air conditioner. End of story.
But that's just the thing, too. I mean, they're talking about India and beyond, they said. So I'm assuming they mean like India, Sri Lanka, a lot of East Asia, Africa, all sorts, poorer countries. They have been for the last several decades prevented on purpose from industrializing so that they can have enough stable electricity, so that they can have air conditioning by the same people who are now opining that they don't, they're too hot to sleep well at night. But I would also say that, it's true that it's harder to sleep at night when it's hot, but we must have, people were doing okay with that before air conditioning was invented. Somehow people were getting some kind of sleep. So I really don't think that this is some kind of like catastrophic spiral that, all of a sudden nobody in India is without air conditioning is going to be able to sleep at night. This is just more junk science.
Look, the vast majority of human history say what you will. We can talk about how air conditioning has saved lives, and it has a lot of lives, and it could do more. By the way, that's something that the UN itself recognizes. The International Energy Agency recognizes. They've all produced studies that show air conditioning saves lives, and it would be one of the most effective ways of saving lives. But as Linnea points out, to say it's the vast majority of human history, it is all but a tenth of 1% of human history. We live without air conditioning. At times when it was hotter than today, like the Roman warm period, it's ridiculous to think that, here in Texas, the courts may force us to air conditioning certain prisons that currently aren't air conditioned. But if they do, they say, oh, it's cruel and unusual. Well, look, then prisoners have always been cruel and unusual. But more importantly, there's no evidence that prisoners are dying in Texas prisons because it's too hot. So, and that's Texas, folks. Look.
Yeah, Cro-Magnon man did not have air conditioning, and I think that's why they went extinct.
Yeah, well, I just have a little bit of advice. So if you're having any trouble sleeping, just put on an Al Gore presentation at the United Nations, any of them at random, and not even the heat of Hades will keep you awake.
There you go.
How dare you?
All right. I was hoping for a rim shot, but I'll take Greta. I know, you're right. That was very mean. Oh, well. Moving on. We're going to talk about our fourth item here. Trump is wrong on gas prices. Oh boy. This comes from Fox Business. Trump alleges gas price gouging, calls for DOJ investigation. Quote, gasoline prices better start going down a lot faster than what I'm seeing, unquote, Trump declared. I mean, Trump should know better. He's done so much good, but we really have to call this out. So we're going to do it. Let me read from the Fox Business article here. President Donald Trump claimed energy companies are engaging in fuel price gouging and said that he has ordered the U.S. Justice Department to investigate. Quote, the big oil companies are not dropping their price at the pump commensurate with the sharply lower prices they are paying for oil. Those prices are dropping like a rock, exclamation point. In other words, customers are being, quote, gouged, Trump asserted in a Truth Social post. Quote, I have instructed the DOJ to immediately start looking into this. Gasoline prices better start going down a lot faster than what I'm seeing, unquote, he declared. Now, the AAA national average for regular gas is $3.93 as of June 24th, down from the month ago average of $4.52, though still significantly higher than the year ago average of $3.22. Crude oil futures were around $70 Wednesday morning. We're even lower prior to the start of war in Iran. And I believe it's crude oil futures are actually below $70 as of this morning. We'll see. Linnea, let me start with you here. You worked in the oil industry. This is not price gouging by oil companies. And, in my opinion, it's wrong whether Biden says it or whether Trump says it.
Yeah, it's not. It's not gouging. For one, these are futures. You don't know. It could spike up to $100 a barrel again tomorrow. These companies that have their gas stations and stuff they're not going to be fluctuating costs that quickly. Not even upwards, although typically the prices do go up a bit faster than they're able to come down. But this isn't gouging. This is just economics. I don't know why. I guess I do know why. It's because Trump is tired of seeing the news try to hit him over the head with gas price stuff, especially into the summer. But again, it's summer. Prices are always higher in the summer because demand is higher because people are traveling around. I don't know. It's frustrating when Trump gets something this wrong. You don't, like you said, you don't want, like when Biden was saying this stuff during his term, when the Ukraine war was popping off, it was wrong then and it's wrong now. I worry about long term, if he really does go down this path of trying to pressure gas stations and oil companies and stuff to reduce their prices outside of the markets, I would worry very much about what that would mean for us long term. Right now, right now as we speak, West Texas intermediate crude is $69.22 dollars a barrel. That makes oil companies nervous. There's kind of like a middle ground where they can operate. They love to have high prices, of course, because, you're getting more for your product for a while. There is a point where that starts to get worrying as well, because they do actually have to use energy in order to produce energy as well. But you don't want it dropping too low, especially not too quickly, because if you want to keep up the infrastructure, if you want to drill new wells, you need that oil price to stay probably around $70 for the United States. It's part of the reason why OPEC used to try to flood the market to crush our oil prices and, make them drop like a rock, is because they knew that we would have to start shutting in wells and start, reducing our rig count and stuff, because the oil companies just can't afford to keep drilling at that price, but they can because they drill dirt cheap compared to us. So it's just distressing. I don't like it, but hopefully someone, Trump, I think, he doesn't do it quite as much as he did during his first term. I think he's getting a little bit more sleep these days, hopefully. But he used to tweet something like totally off the wall at 3 a.m. This seems like maybe not quite one of those, but one of those knee jerk, not very well thought out. I'm just, Trump is just reacting to stuff that he had just seen in the news or something. Hopefully someone around him, maybe someone in perhaps the energy department, might go up to him and say, hey, this is not good narrative to be pushing here. Let's not do this.
It's poor economic populism. And, there's another reason why gas prices are typically higher in the summer, and that's because they have to change over to particular blends, which are more expensive to refine and limit the supply. And the only thing that forcing oil companies or stations to charge lower to avoid the claims of gouging will result in is what we had in the 70s, which is fuel shortages. They have to make a profit. The refineries are the lowest profit margin part of the industry, but gas stations are not far behind. You cut their profit, they just can't sell the product. The product will dry up. And they're not there yet, gas oil prices, but they're getting close to where a lot of wells in the U.S. are marginal wells that can't produce it at a certain price and make a profit. So, another reason, by the way, that they go down slower is because the oil that's in the tank was paid for at a certain price. You're not going to say, okay, well, yeah, I paid this much for the oil, but now I'm going to charge less in selling what oil still remains than what I paid for. That would be crazy. You like you say, it's futures. You buy oil in the future even for gas stations. You buy gas in the future, and you're going to sell that gas at the price that it comes in, with a profit margin.
And here I was thinking Trump was just bartering the best price for you guys. Shows me how little I know about the oil industry and the futures. That's actually fascinating.
One of our viewers here just made a good point. Nothing as it seems says, well, they could lower the federal gas tax on diesel and gasoline. Think about that. Or states could temporarily get rid of the taxes, or maybe permanently get rid of the taxes or something. There are things that the governments can do that aren't pressuring producers.
Yeah. By the way, before we get moving, Sterling, can you just refresh your page or leave the studio and come back in? Your audio and video is getting out of sync, and you don't look too good on the screen.
Okay.
Which usually I don't complain about, but
No
today
offense.
I'm gonna complain about it.
I will do that. Bye.
Okay. So go ahead.
Sterling doesn't look great. He should just come back next week.
Yeah. Yes. More time for us to talk. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Johansson says his PC is powered by windmills. It actually probably is, considering Texas has gone pretty hard into wind there.
That
So
is
who
true.
knows?
We have to make that joke way too often on this podcast because it's connected to garbage. But so they call oil, another nickname for oil is liquid gold, and it is very valuable, but it's very volatile. Do you know what's much more stable and valuable than liquid gold? Gold, just gold and other precious metals, which is why this is the perfect time to talk to you about the sponsor of this program, and that is Advisor Metals. If you listen to this show and other conservative shows, you hear tons of pitches for buying gold and silver and other precious metals, and there are a ton of companies that want your business. But we want to tell you why you should trust and go with our sponsor, Advisor Metals, and that's because of the man who runs the company, and his name is Ira Bershatsky. Ira is the managing member of Advisor Metals, and he doesn't employ those high-pressure tactics or deceptive marketing ploys like so many in big gold. He also doesn't deal in so-called rare coins, which you don't really want. When you buy gold and other precious metals from Advisor Metals, you are dealing in quality bullion, and that is so much better when the time comes to liquidate this valuable physical asset. And when you buy from Advisor Metals, you're going to have that investment sent discreetly to your home. I also want to let you know that Ira is advertising on this program with the Heartland Institute because he is an America First patriot. He does not donate to Democrats. He refuses to work with proxies of the Chinese Communist Party, which we're going to get to in a minute. And he, like us, abhors the machinations and schemes of the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and all of these global taxes. No, he is against all of that. And that is why we are so proud to have Ira and Advisor Metals as our sponsor. So if you want to diversify your portfolio, or if you want to back up your IRA with real physical bullion of precious metals, you need to go to climaterealismshow.com/metals. You can leave your information there, no pressure. Ira's going to get in contact with you and make the whole process very easy. climaterealismshow.com/metals. And you have to tell them who sent you, because that helps us and this program while you're helping your financial future. Thank you very much for this matter and for that at least top 20 segue that I've ever done. All right. And I also tricked our audience and Andy by getting to the ad read before I usually do, because now our fifth segment today in the Crazy Climate News is one of the reasons we have Anika on with us today. Because again, we were exchanging messages and she thought, hey, this is a really interesting topic. I wonder if we could talk about it on the show. And I said, absolutely, we should talk about this on the show. So just let me set it up for you here, and then we'll get to you, Anika. So in those messages, you said, you want to come on and talk about how China is gaming the climate and energy game. So despite being the second largest economy in the world, China still gets to be classified as a developing country. And so it never has any emissions limit, ever. And that has allowed its annual CO2 emissions to be 12.29 billion in 2024, compared to, by the way, only about 5 billion in the US and 313 million tons in the UK. Meanwhile, the United States, the number one economy in the world, is not going to play this game. But the United Kingdom, number 5 economy, is playing this game. And you're going to end up as you said to me in a message, a third world country in terms of power. So I think that's a nice setup and a great jumping off point to get into the history of this scam that allows China to wage economic war on the rest of the world, thanks to the idiots who run so many countries in the West. And unfortunately, that includes Great Britain.
Yeah, Jim, you nailed the jumping off point. So here's China, still classified as a developing country, no emissions restrictions ever. And let me take you through how this scam was built. So China helped shape the rules in the negotiations of the Clean Development Mechanism, which launched in 2005 under the Kyoto Protocol. And they negotiated who would be classified as a developing country and who would be classified as a developed country. What a surprise. The Western world plus Japan had emissions restrictions. And we all know that the cheaper energy a nation has access to, the higher the growth that economy has. Cheap energy has lifted billions out of poverty across the world. And these developing countries got massive economic advantages. Cheap energy for unlimited growth, no restrictions on pollution, and they could sell carbon credits to the West. China basically dealt themselves a winning hand. And by 2010, China was supplying around 60% of the global carbon credits. It was basically a giant money printing machine for them. So we paid them for carbon credits, and we often handed over clean technology secrets and watched our manufacturing flee to places with no real standards, even though we all signed the same treaty. This isn't environmentalism. This is economic warfare on the West. Our steel industry, the best in the world, got absolutely hammered. And just recently, our government sold it to China because it had gone bankrupt. And if that's not a breach of national security, I don't know what is. And it goes deeper. Dr. Ding Yihui from the China Meteorological Administration was vice chair of the IPCC working group on the science that fed into the UK's Climate Change Act commitments. So look, the rose-tinted glasses are off. This was never about saving the planet. It was a transfer of wealth scam that let China aggressively industrialize on cheap coal while the UK tied both of its hands behind its back. We got higher energy prices, we lost industries, they got growth, power, and leverage. And since the Clean Development Mechanism came into force in 2005, China has tripled its coal capacity. Meanwhile, coal power plants around Europe have almost all shut, and there are 0 left in the UK. This is economic warfare, not sustainability.
I'd like to point out this happened even before Paris. Paris was a reflection of what happened the year before. I believe the year before in Berlin, when China, look, Trump has always said, America first. We're going to put America first. Every leader's country should put his country first. They are the leaders of that country and democratically elected. They're supposed to represent their people, not be a global leader. So to the extent that England allowed this to happen, that's on England's leaders, not China. But what China did in Berlin is they said, for the purposes of climate change agreements, all going forward, we will always be considered a developing country. That's what America should be, because we haven't stopped developing. Until you reach economic stasis, and then, which would mean decline over time, you're a developing country. And China recognized that. They're no fools. We should do the same in the West. Trump has recognized that. It would be good if the next leaders of the UK and Europe recognize the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, blaming someone else for my leader's failures is classic, but kind of the whole thing was so well planned by them. It's definitely not a coincidence that we have limits on our growth and they don't. They took 800 million people out of poverty in their country, which is fantastic for them. But now we are going into poverty. I mean, why does one country have to do well and the other not do so well? Why can't we just coexist in peace, guys? Is that too much to ask?
Yeah, apparently so.
I mean, if China distinctly wants to, dominate the entire planet, basically, they want to be able to get away with, ravaging the, material wealth of other countries, especially in Africa and stuff, although it's starting to kind of fall apart for them there. I really, there's kind of a perspective in some Republican circles that China is like a neutral actor, or even, they're just trying to do their best for their people.
Wow.
Maybe if you like really stretch, but the last time I checked, China is still a communist country, and they still like crush their citizens if they say anything against the government. I don't think that the Chinese Communist Party is all that concerned with the material or, like mental well-being of their people. except to the point where, if they get too poor, riots start breaking out, and then the government does not want to risk destabilization, especially while the Trump administration and a few other countries are starting to become a bit more China skeptical. But you're totally right, Anika, that China really did an amazing job of setting up kind of a win-win condition for themselves, especially with the green stuff, right? So they're allowed to pollute as much as they want. They also position themselves to be the number one producer of all of the rare earth metals and materials that are needed for the so-called green transition, which can't happen without those materials, because things like electric cars and solar panels and all of that take a lot more rare earths than traditional energy sources do. And China still is, in possession of all of that. And so then you get the United States under Trump, who's looking at trying to at least partially decouple from China on these issues. So we have, Trump is trying to get us to be super aggressive in AI, for instance. And those data centers are something that China would very much like to have all of our companies go to them for. And so what China is doing now is the same thing that they were doing with funding green groups in the United States to protest energy infrastructure. Now they're funding green groups in the United States, and even some so-called supposedly conservative groups in the United States to protest data centers. And it's all the same kind of thing. But I think that we're going to actually end up routing them a bit on some of this based on the progression of natural gas and especially nuclear technology now, because there's a huge push from the administration to get into nuke. And I think that'll just cut them off at the knees fairly well on a lot of those angles. But they really did set themselves up to just dominate the field as long as we continued on the green transition. And I'm very, very glad that that's kind of stalled out a bit.
I mean, that was something completely fascinating that I learned from your talk back in Zurich at the World Prosperity Forum, Linnea, is when you were talking about, the dominance of China with the rare earth minerals, and that they control 90% of the world's supply, or it was the processing of it. That kind of made me go, oh, wow. I think maybe a swear word ran through my head instead of wow. But yeah, it really opened my eyes to the dominance that they have accrued. And obviously then immediately I thought, well, all of that stuff, you need solar panels and electric vehicle batteries and wind turbines. So yeah, it's complete dominance of the green space.
Yeah, and I mean, even here in the United States, we could mine all the rare earths we want. We don't have the refining capacity to take on the refining. It's the refining that China really has almost a complete and total international monopoly on. They process 98 to 99% of the world's rare earth materials, which is an insane monopoly for a company or a country to hold over a critical material when you can mine rare earths. You can get them pretty much anywhere. But China is the only one with the refining infrastructure. And part of it is because it's kind of nasty stuff to work with. These minerals are so tiny, I guess you could say, in the rock that it takes quite a bit of chemical processing in order to get them separated. You can't just physically, mechanically separate them. So a lot of Western countries don't have the stomach for having that kind of chemical intensive processing. I think we have maybe 2 plants that can do it in the United States. But it's a tricky situation. You have to convince people, one, that it's going to be okay for us to have a minerals refining, but also that it's going to be more expensive for us to do it because we're not just going to dump cobalt into a big open pit. We're not, you should see some of the pictures of Chinese mineral processing plants and stuff. They literally just leave it on the surface in these big, glowing Simpsons green, open lakes of toxic fluids and stuff. It's pretty nasty. And of course we would never put up with that. But
huge slag ponds.
Yeah.
And I did not mean to imply that the Chinese leaders care about every one of their citizens, if that's what you took away.
No, I wasn't pointing.
But that's true of no leaders, as far as I can tell, anywhere. The elites don't care about most people. They put on a nice. They put on a nice show. They my wife's country of Venezuela, before Chavez came to power, democratically elected, they didn't care a whit about the people. But every election time they came around and said, we'll promise you a chicken in every pot and free clothing for your kids at school. And then they go away after the election. So that's true. That's as true in the UK, I believe, and largely in the US. I don't think Nancy Pelosi or any of these people really care about most American people. But what China did care about is their international and geopolitical power. And they put their country first with regards to that. And I think that that's what leaders should do for their countries. I don't blame the Chinese for doing what I wish America did all the time. Put themselves first.
I suppose it's kind of like what the British Empire did. And, China run all ports across Africa now. But the rare earth material refining, is that very energy intensive, or is it just waste?
No, it's just
toxic
stuff.
waste.
It's not more energy intensive than any other industrial process. It's just expensive to do it without just like dumping trash all over the place.
Yeah, it causes an environmental complications that most Western countries, especially the United States, are not really willing to put up with. It
doesn't have to. In order to do it at Chinese prices, we would have to not care about the environmental impact. But it can be done cleanly and has been done cleanly in the United States. We just want our cheap crap from China. So
yeah,
it's a combination.
Be kind of blunt about it.
It's a combination of Richard Nixon and the EPA being formed. Richard Nixon opened up China to trading, and that was a good thing at the time, and it still remains generally a good thing. But then when the EPA also got ready with all of their stuff, American business exported a lot of their manufacturing overseas, or they just simply gave up on it in the United States. And so we ended up with, a lot of the pollution going to China. And so basically that's what's happened. We've exported a lot of our manufacturing to other countries, including China, leaving us without options.
Yeah. I'm really glad you suggested we talk about this today, Anika, because I don't think it's talked about enough about the way China has gamed this system. And I'm frankly surprised. I guess I shouldn't be, but I really am surprised at how much the West has let them get away with this. I mean, again, how can the second biggest economy in the world be a developing nation? They build a coal plant or two every week after week after week for years on end. And that's fine. In the United States and in the UK, we have to shut down all of our coal plants to save the planet. While what China does, you can show that chart again at some point here, Andy. The emissions gap of CO2 emissions, again, if you care about carbon dioxide emissions, I don't think it's a big deal. But if you were going to base global policy on this, China is so far ahead of everybody else, you need binoculars to see them flying overhead. It is ridiculous. And that they have no restrictions. They have a free hand to build as much energy as they want in any way they want. And in the West or in Africa, which is really even dumber, they can't do that. China can do what they want. Africa has to have green energy. China can build a coal plant every week, and it's just fine. And the world just turns a blind eye to their pollution, pretends it doesn't exist. And then we turn around and we buy green energy from them that is shipped on boats. This is so insane. It would be awesome. The only person in the world on the global stage right now who could give a speech like that would be Donald Trump. It would be wonderful if the next time he got to address the United Nations, he gave a speech pointing out this hypocrisy and then demanded that the world no longer put up with this crap. And we're going to end this imbalance, and we're done impoverishing the West and impoverishing the real developing world, like in Africa, while letting China do all. I just don't get it. This needs to be said. We're saying it on this show. Take it to the world, Anika, please.
It almost makes me wonder who all of these protest groups like Just Stop Oil, etc., are funded by, because there's none of them, you know, trying to stop China. No one ever says anything about China. Therefore, are they all funded by the CCP? Perhaps, you know, there was a theory, and you guys can probably enlighten me a bit more here, that you know, they put anti-fracking, Russia pays for anti-fracking protesters in America and that sort of thing. I mean, that type of environment might be at play, because I'm sorry, but no one's ever complaining about China, ever. Just Stop Oil has never mentioned China. Why is no one going to China and interrupting, you know, their diplomatic missions? Why is no one sitting outside the Chinese government chained, you know, sewing their lips shut?
Yeah, well, they know they won't follow the haul the bunch away.
Yeah, I can answer that question. People like to live. They don't like to be imprisoned in gulags and forced to refine rare earth minerals. That's why they don't protest in China. Also, let's face it, the Greens, certainly in America, but probably anywhere they are authoritarians themselves. They admire China. They've said as much. They like the fact that China can get things done. Democracy just gets in the way. You have to discuss things with people and convince them. No, we don't have time. The world's ending. We need to be more like China. Now, I don't think that they love China's emissions profile, but they know they have no power over China, and they do have power over us. The power that we willingly grant them, that's a mistake, but they do. And like I said, as far as protesting in China or at their missions, well, like I said, they, like a lot of people, want to continue living, and they don't want to be in gulags. That's why that doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you could wave Harry Potter's magic wand and turn off all CO2 emissions from the UK, it amounts to zero, or as you like to say in the UK, 0.8% of global CO2 emissions comes from the United Kingdom. So if you could just turn it off, it would make no difference. The world would not notice. And China would not, and China would actually probably exceed that in about 6 months. I mean, and Anika, the policies you have in your country to control CO2, I know you talk about it all the time. There's a growing movement in the UK pushing back on climate nonsense. You're a big part of that push. You know, I gotta believe that this messaging, which is so easy and simple, it's just math, should be easy enough to get through to the British people, and hopefully eventually into the British government.
Most of the British people, you know, are on board, but the ones that are on the left, when I say, well, 1% of emissions can't change the global climate, they come back with, yeah, but renewable energy is so good. It's going to make us so advanced. There's so much money to be made in renewable energies. And I have no idea what they're talking about, because the country is going bankrupt from it. So they are heavily mistaken. And obviously you have Mad Miliband, who is a complete fanatic, and whether he knows what he's doing or not, I don't know, but he's not going to stop. I don't know whether you guys know, but Keir Starmer has resigned recently. So it looks like Andy Burnham is just being parachuted in to be the next PM, even though we should have a general election to vote for someone. But of course, no, not in this pretend democracy. So there's a chance he could become the chancellor, and we could get a very, very left government. What we've had could look good.
I think I saw today that the new PM is down on Miliband as the chancellor. That even he's having some misgivings about promoting Miliband and pushing some of the climate stuff. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm right. For your sake, I hope I'm right. but I could be wrong, I guess. But that's what I thought I saw in the headline in the Telegraph.
Well, this would be illegal in Australia, but when Andy Burnham was the mayor of Manchester, he awarded his wife's company a $2 million contract. It was an electric vehicle company. So, that's the sort of shady stuff that we're just going to keep on getting over here. But anyway, hopefully one day we have a general election and the people can vote for who they really want. One day, maybe.
Well, like they say about communism, you get to vote for communism one time and one time only. That's it. So hopefully that's not going to hold true in the UK. But I think it's time for the audience's favorite segment, and that's Q&A. Take it away, Linnea.
All right. We have the first question here is very important from Mars Rock over on Rumble. Does Heartland have any climate superstar t-shirts? We need merch. We really do.
We need some merch. I don't think you can sell merch on your YouTube channel until you're remonetized. So it's been a while. We can still do some designs. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out a way. It'd be pretty fun.
We have heartland.org. And
I'm wearing my Heartland shirt. I'm wearing my Heartland shirt right now. Oh, Jim too.
Everybody has Heartland merch but me, it turns out.
I put a hat aside. I put a hat aside for you.
I did go and find a hat.
Maybe we need a shirt that says, "I survived the climate crisis."
Yeah, that'd be pretty good. Maybe the audience can suggest some shirts that would be funny that they would buy, but we'll see. That would be fun. All right. Engineer Guy says, aren't we coming up on hurricane season? What are the predictions for this season? Bob, you are a month late. We did the hurricane show a couple weeks ago because it started June 1st is when hurricane season starts. And the predictions for the season is that it's below normal or below average. We'll see. That doesn't mean that we're not going to get landfalls in the United States. I think I was looking at Joe Bastardi's page this morning, and it seems like there's a little bit of action possibly in the future in around Florida. And of course, we had that tropical storm in Texas last week. So it doesn't mean no storms. It just means fewer than average, probably.
Yeah. I think the one we had near the Texas coast, we got some rain out of that. That is the only tropical storm that's happened in June. So we're about to enter the second month of the season. And so far we've had one tropical storm, not a hurricane, just a named storm. And so at least so far, they're on track with their below normal prediction.
All right. Chris asks, he says, Sterling looks a bit younger after his break. Can I get some of what he has been having? Yes, Sterling, what is the secret? When you went caving, did you find the fountain of youth?
I didn't find the fountain of youth, but I did relax for a week. I don't take my computer when I travel, so I didn't. I was literally out of touch. I think I posted some things to my phone. But also, maybe I look young because I'm getting no sleep. I've been staying up very late. In the evenings, watching reaction videos to music. Some people have gotten on have been on the cat video thing for years. My two video things are kids and dogs, and different people around the world reacting to different songs. And last night I was up till 3:00 in the morning watching reaction videos.
Wow.
Well, that's actually 3 nights in a row. So there you go.
Sterling only looks you guys. Sterling only looks younger because his camera is garbage and it won't focus on his face, and he's all pixelated. I would look 15 years old if I had Sterling's camera.
Well, now I'll say this: you seem to think that that's not intentional. I'm smart enough to know that it helps me out.
Yeah, it's the soft focus filter from 50s movies.
Yeah, that's exactly. Right.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Ed Reed says, doesn't UK air conditioning use renewable electricity? I don't know what percentage of electricity is renewable in the UK. But I mean, you don't get to pick. Your electricity to your house is your electricity to your house.
Right.
And the sun doesn't shine at night when you want to sleep with your air conditioner on. We just heard a story about you can't sleep because of the heat. Well, the sun ain't shining at night, folks.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what to believe from this government. So even though they say that we get 60% of our energy from renewables, I don't really know whether I can believe that. And as you guys have just pointed out, it's definitely not straight from the renewables into something so energy intensive like an air conditioner. It would have to be stored, and some would have to come from gas, etc. So probably not, and unlikely in the future, because apparently we're not going to have enough energy to facilitate air conditioning. Hence, it's softly being banned through building regulations.
Let's talk for just a second about something Anika said. Stored, right? Battery backup is the largest storage, the most prominent storage. The biggest battery backup factory right now, it can store, if it's not spent throughout the day regulating power from renewables, 4 hours of power. I don't know any night that only lasts 4 hours. So if it were all on storage, it would discharge after 4 hours. And then what happens? Well, the battery backup has to recharge itself, which means it's taking power off the grid when it's still needed. The storage is the worst, as far as I can tell, form of energy, because it's literally drawing power down when power is needed, and it runs out after 4 hours, and blackouts last a lot longer than 4 hours, and sometimes.
If a blackout lasts longer than 4 hours, call your doctor.
Here's a terrific question from Jay Wester. It's kind of a follow-up to that, and that is, why is it that air conditioning is harmful because of electricity usage while EV charging isn't?
Well, electrical vehicle charging and the purchase of such electrical vehicles makes China rich, whereas air conditioning would keep UK people alive, and therefore get your priorities right, people.
Yeah.
Death to the English, life to the Chinese. All facilitated by our good government.
Yeah. I mean, I still can't get over how in the hottest days in the UK, maybe in a couple of years, that's the time they say, no, you have to turn off your air conditioning. That's like telling a person who's starving, you put a big pile of food in front of them and say, no, you can't eat this now. You're going to eat that next week. You know, it's
kind of like they want to rack up some data from climate related deaths.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Well, look, what's going on in England? I'm sorry, Anthony.
Anika, you know, we started a whole nation over here revolting over tea. You guys might think about starting a revolt over there, because I can say not being able to stay cool at night, not being able to eat what you want, and so forth and so on. That's a lot more revolting than revolting over tea.
Though I wouldn't recommend throwing solar panels into the English Channel by way of revolt. You know, California led in this, does the same thing every year. What England is doing is no different than what goes on in California. They have pushed and pushed and pushed electric vehicles. They're the leader by far in the US in electric vehicles and in charging stations. And yet every summer when they have blackouts, they tell the people, we want you to go to work, we want you to be productive, but don't charge your electric vehicles that we force you to have.
Yeah, it's I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing in Texas too, right? They ask you to turn your AC up and stuff. Same thing that happens anywhere. They say, you know, grid load is bad. If there's a heat wave, they want you to stop using as much electricity. So, yeah, it's the key to victory here and to personal comfort and safety and health is to increase the amount of available energy, not decrease it.
Yep.
All right.
Access to power and electricity.
Let's see. All right. This is from Mr. Johansson, who says, question for Anika. I read today that pressure is now also increasing on Mad Miliband. Any truth to that?
I'm not sure. I didn't see anything, but I mean, there is a general sentiment here in the UK that, you know, he's called Mad Miliband for a reason, right? His net zero policies are destroying our economy and people are feeling it in their pockets every day. Food prices are set to rise by 50% again. Maybe that is what this chap read. So, and it's all because of our poor access to cheap, reliable energy that should be coming from fossil fuels. So, yeah, there is mounting pressure, but he is not backing down. And the only way I think that this is going to stop is if the Labour Party goes out of power.
And speaking of that, there's this question from Tech that says, when is Reform taking over Parliament?
Hopefully in the near future, hopefully at the next general election. Yeah, look, I believe that things are going to get a little bit worse before they get better. I believe that this period of history in the UK will be studied by scholars in the future, and it will be the beginning of a revolution that transformed the UK economy when it was on the precipice of its demise. I really, truly believe that. And I have to believe that to remain optimistic in this situation. But I really do believe that we are on a trajectory of a very good period that we will come into in the future, where we will repeal the Climate Change Act. We will follow in America's steps of leaving all United Nations architecture, and we will prosper once again. You know, we have to resist the invasion of the left. So, yeah, if a general election was called tomorrow, Reform is polling at about 33% and have been for about the last 18 months. We would have a majority in Parliament, and we would be able to, you know, make laws and pass bills within a day. So hence the potential for a real revolution and a real U-turn of this country's economy.
A question just came up from Chris Nesbitt, and I was going to ask you the same thing, Anika. So I was very, positive about Reform's prospects 6 months ago, even 3 months ago. But I've heard about this new party. What's it called? Restore. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering if it's going to undercut Reform's, will it end up ruining it by splitting the sensible vote?
Look, there's a lot of talk of that. We had a very significant by-election here recently, and Restore got about 6% of the vote. So, and that 6% wouldn't have been enough for Reform to win. Labour took it. That's when Andy Burnham he won and became an MP. So people who want change in this country, they are waking up in droves, and they are realizing that the only vehicle which is going to take us to change is Reform. So at the end of the day, Restore, they have all of the same ideas as we do. Some are a little bit more extreme, and I don't blame them. People are really angry. They're sick of it. They have had to watch their neighborhoods completely transform. They no longer recognize the country that they live in. There is a risk that Sharia law is going to come into some areas. Women could be fined for wearing skirts. I mean, it's on the precipice of, being quite bad. But I really don't believe that it will split the vote and allow Labour back in, because I honestly believe that we have a revolution in our future. So that's my personal belief.
Okay.
All right, this I'm going to address quickly from Peter Halligan, who says, the levelized cost of always on gas is 10 times cheaper than wind and solar. Do you agree? I don't know if exactly 10 times, and I don't know why you're yelling at me but with your all caps. But yeah, it is cheaper, especially if it's always on. It's when this is where things get a little bit complicated that probably the general public isn't aware of. But there is a pretty significant cost difference between always on gas, which is just like baseload natural gas, and peaker plant gas, which is where you turn it off when you don't need it and you flip it back on when you do. In Texas, they say that it's kind of a match made in heaven for wind power, because when the wind power suddenly starts going down, they can turn the gas up on it to compensate for that loss if they need to. I say, why have the thing that's, not controllable in the first place on the grid at all? But yeah, it is cheaper than wind and solar. Yes. All right, let's go. Okay, Anthony, this one's for you. I've got one from Bo Gus, who says, since the heat wave is pretty much confined to the Europe in general, doesn't it qualify as weather and not climate?
Well, where it's at doesn't really qualify it in any way, shape, or form. It's the length of things that make it the difference between weather and climate. And of course, it is a weather event. It is something that's caused by what we call an omega block. And so it's a weather event. It lasts a few days and then it dissipates and moves on. And it's about the length of time. And of course, the media doesn't understand this because they're dumber than a box of rocks, but they try to conflate weather and climate all the time. And then they say, oh, well, it's elevated because of climate change. Well, yeah, it might be elevated a tiny bit from climate change, but mostly it's elevated from the fact that the majority of thermometers used to measure temperature officially are in cities and or airports, and these are overwhelmingly hotter locations, and we've proven this time and time again.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. Let's go. This is a good question that I actually don't know entirely the answer to. I could guesstimate. Nothing as it seems says France has all that nuclear energy generation, which is true. They are something like 60 or 70%, maybe more than 70% nuclear, yet still very little air conditioning. What gives? My guess, and I'll pass it to the rest of the panel to answer probably a bit better, but my guess is a lot of the buildings are very old in France. It's the same in the United States. Like when you go up to Maine, to the 13 original colonies, with the exception of the southern ones, air conditioning becomes less and less common in the older construction just because they weren't built for it in the first place. So it's kind of hard to put anything in. My sister lives in Rhode Island and she didn't have air conditioning in her apartment, but she put in like a window unit when she moved in. Pretty common up there.
Yeah, that's exactly the answer, Linnea. When I went to Paris, probably, I'm guessing 70 to 80% of the buildings that the apartment that I lived in, for instance, they were built 200 and 300 years ago or more. There was no air conditioning. There certainly are no vents running in there. Central air it just didn't exist, and retrofitting them very, very expensive. But you talk about nuclear energy. France is having an issue with nuclear, and this isn't one reason why nuclear isn't the answer for everything. They're having to shut down some of their nuclear because of the heat right now. Nuclear, at least modern, contemporary nuclear plants, require water cooling, and the water's so hot it's not providing the cooling they need, so they have to tamp down their nuclear production. So if everyone was ramping up air conditioning right now, it still wouldn't help France because they'd have to just dial back their nuclear more. In the end, there is no single, everyone here says, oh, we just need more nuke. We need more nuke. There's no single answer for electric power. There are only better and worse answers at points of time. And that's why fossil fuels, which are so flexible, are so good. Natural gas as a peaker is fantastic.
Oh, there are some more questions in the stack, but unfortunately we have run out of time, so I'm going to hand it back to Jim here. But thank you everyone who is watching the show for contributing your questions. We love to get to them all. Yeah, we've run out of time here, so.
Yes, it's time to go. I am sorry about that, everyone. We wish we could stay for 2 hours, but that's just not in the cards. I want to thank everybody who is participating in the chat and watching us live, as you can do every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I'd like to thank our very special guest today, Anika Sweetland, who I know we're going to have on again in the near future. It was fantastic having you with us. I want to thank, as usual, Anthony Watts, Sterling Burnett, and Linnea Lueken of the Heartland Institute. And I usually say we will talk to you again next week, but next week is yet again a holiday. We'll be celebrating the 250th anniversary, the birthday of the United States. So we will see you again in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.